On July 24, 1937, the state of Alabama dropped all charges against 4 of the 9 so-called Scottsboro Boys, 6 years after they were charged with gang raping 2 white girls in Scottsboro, Alabama. Back then, it was 1931. Jim Crow ruled across the American South. Segregation was the law, and racism was official. On a March day in Scottsboro, following an altercation on a freight train, several white teenage boys walked into Sheriff Matt Wann's office and claimed they'd been attacked by 9 black boys. Wann deputized a posse, stopped the train at nearby Paint Rock, Alabama, and arrested 9 black boys. He also found 2 white girls who accused the boys of rape. News spread quickly around Scottsboro, and a lynch mob gathered in broad daylight outside the jail where the 9 boys were held. Sheriff Wann addressed the mob, threatening to kill the first man who tried to enter the jail. Wann then called in the National Guard. Although black-on-white rape was a capital offense in Alabama, none of the 9 accused were allowed to consult a lawyer. The local newspapers all but convicted the boys, fueling public anger. And local politicians railed against race mixing and the dangers of woebegone black youth. The white public wanted blood. In a quickie trial in Scottsboro in front of an all-white jury, all 9 boys, except 12-year-old Roy White, were convicted of rape and sentenced to death in the electric chair. Following appeal, a new trial was set with a change of venue in nearby Decatur, Alabama. In a bombshell, one of the white girls, Ruby Bates, admitted that she fabricated the rape story. The Scottsboro boys, she said, were innocent. Nevertheless, the jury once again found the defendants guilty. Another trial was ordered, and despite Bates' recantation, 5 of the boys were found guilty for a 3rd time. Charges were dropped against the remaining 4, who'd spent 6 years in prison. In the end, none of the convicted were executed, although one was shot in prison by a guard. Clarence Norris, the oldest defendant, escaped, was found in 1976, and pardoned by Governor George Wallace. The Scottsboro Boys case remains a shining example of mob injustice. A racist public, a sensational press, and a conga line of demagoguing politicians removed fairness and impartiality from the justice system, leaving only bloodlust and bigotry. Today, the South is integrated, and while racism still exists, it's not institutionalized, like during the Scottsboro trials. But some things never change. Earlier this year in Florida, another southern state, George Zimmerman allegedly shot Trayvon Martin to death following an altercation inside a gated community in the Florida city of Sanford. Politicians and race hustlers pounced, stoking tensions with wild rhetoric led by members of the U.S. Congressional Black Caucus. For example, and keep in mind, many of these statements were made long before any evidence from the shooting was made public, and all of them were made before Zimmerman's trial, which has yet to begin. Democratic Congresswoman Frederica Wilson called the shooting racial profiling. Trayvon, she said, was, quote, hunted down like a dog, shot in the street, adding that, quote, we all know who the murderer is. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, another Democrat, called the Martin shooting a hate crime. Congressman Hank Johnson from Florida said Mr. Martin was executed, quote unquote. Reverend Jesse Jackson, a man who relies on racial tensions to justify everything he does, said, quote, blacks are under attack. Reverend Al Sharpton turned his MSNBC show into the Hate George Zimmerman Hour. In an unbelievable act, movie director Spike Lee tweeted to the masses what he thought was Zimmerman's home address, hoping for some unspecified form of vigilante action. but the address actually belonged to David and Elaine McLean, an elderly white couple who fled their home during the tumult that followed. George Zimmerman, shades of the Scottsboro Boys. Of course, the cases aren't identical. Trayvon Martin is dead. But the forces opposing Zimmerman, or more accurately, Zimmerman's right to a fair trial, resemble in tone and practice the lynch mob outside Sheriff Wan's jail back in 1931.